Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, here's to another 10,000 days. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with ya. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great, Patrick. Before we started recording, you and I were having a spirited discussion about a couple of game shows, about Jeopardy, which reportedly is about to get a new host. And then
like a new permanent host.
Yes, a new permanent host. And then that got us thinking about the Price is Right transition from Bob Barker to Drew Carey,
who has been hosting the show now for 17 years.
Yeah, pre-Obama, he was the host.
Can you believe that? He's been hosting that show for longer than he hosted Whose Line Is It Anyway? And the Drew Carey show combined.
Yeah, that's so crazy. And so that, of course, led us to the Price is Right Wikipedia page.
Of course.
Where I found that the director of Price is Right from 2013 to present is a person named Adam Sandler.
Are we sure that it's not Adam Sandler?
Well, there's no sourcing of this information, so I can't be entirely sure, but it feels unlikely to me. Also, there's a couple of directors who I won't name who only...
To protect their privacy.
Exactly, who only lasted a year before Mr. Sandler came in. So
wait, lasted a year during the Drew Carey era?
Yeah, that's right. So there are two right before Mr. Sandler who were only directors for a year.
Not good fits.
I guess not.
When's the last time you watched an episode of The Price is Right?
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time for me too. I'm speaking of things that it's been a long time since. We are, of course, we will get to it in just a second, but it has been 10,000 days since the last, slightly over 10,000 days now, since the last StarTropics game was released. I'm a big StarTropics fan. Mark tolerates my StarTropics fandom. So today we're going to be doing a couple different rankings from StarTropics. Really, it's just an excuse for us to talk about a NES anti-classic. But before we get to that anti-classic, let me bring up this other anti-classic, Sonic Forces. Would you like to borrow my copy of it for the Nintendo Switch? You certainly can try. All you gotta do is email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com and give us a mailing address where we can send you my copy of this game. You play it for as long as you want. You send it back. It doesn't cost you a thing. There may be a copy of Untitled Goose Game in there instead of Sonic Forces, just like there may be a Drew Carey in your Price is Right instead of a Bob Barker.
Exactly,
like, you can never tell.
That.
Yeah.
Yep. So for some of you, this may be the Untitled Goose Game borrowing program. For others, it is the Sonic Forces borrowing program. With whatever name you celebrate the borrowing program, it is still the perfect program.
That's right.
The other thing you can do is you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate it a bunch. It helps people find the show. We love reading your reviews. So yeah, if you leave us a review on the US Apple Podcast Store, we'll give you a shout out on the show. If you review us anywhere else, let us know. Send us an email, hit us up on Twitter, and we're happy to give you a shout out. We would love to give you a shout out.
Yeah, there's nothing that we would love more than giving you a shout out. Other than maybe that's second place to reading the positive review about our show.
That's right.
Right? I mean, like we got to have priorities here, right? We got to look out for ourselves.
We're selfish people. Always looking out for number one.
And number two, which is the person on the other side of the table. All right, Mark, let's stop screwing around. Let's get to the serious business of celebrating StarTropics. Perhaps a dubious franchise for Nintendo. There are only two entries in this game. Both came out on the NES. Both in the early 90s. Even the first one is sort of at like the tail end of like the NES's life cycle, right? Like, you know, neither of them are. I called the first one an anti-classic, and I feel like that's the one of the best ways to put it, that like it is an old game and it has like some sort of like vaunted reputation that isn't good necessarily. Like I don't think people love the game, but I think if you were around for it, you remember it and it made like some sort of impression on you.
Yeah, the first one came out in 1990, so you're right.
Yeah.
Like it is towards the end of the NES's lifespan. I think for me, like StarTropics, I think if you grew up
Yeah.
playing StarTropics, then you love it because there is a dedicated fan base for StarTropics.
Hugely dedicated. That is actually why we are aware that it has been 10,000 days since the last game came out, is because I follow a couple different StarTropics like fan Twitter accounts, and they were all posting it a couple days ago. So yeah, there is like a rabid community that is like excited about the game.
Yeah, and but StarTropics is like a weird kind of like experiment dead end for Nintendo.
Yeah.
Where one of Nintendo's development teams in Japan created this game specifically trying to appeal to American audiences.
Yeah.
And so it is
not by hiring American developers, mind you.
No. It's like they all got in a room and were like, well, what do Americans like?
Right. They pulled out a whiteboard and they were like, start naming American things now. And they were like, baseball? And they're like, baseball goes on the board. Great. They're like, Seattle? We have an office in Seattle, right? And they're like, Seattle, good. Wrote it up on the board.
What do Americans look like? Well, they all have red hair.
Red hair,
They all have freckles.
Right. Then they just put a picture of Archie Andrews on the board.
But one of the things that growing up, I was unaware of StarTropics. It wasn't until I started reading like Electronic Gaming Monthly. So I'll just say Entertainment Weekly. What's hot or not? I have to read Entertainment Weekly to find out.
StarTropics wasn't Entertainment Weekly ever.
So Electronic Gaming Monthly. And or like Nintendo Power when they would like mention it, or there would be like fan art for it or something. And every once in a while, I feel like especially in the Wii era, there would be fan rumors probably based in nothing. They would be like, ooh, I think just people wanted more StarTropics.
Yeah, well, and it is a game that keeps like popping up on virtual consoles and like the NES Switch Online and the NES Classic Edition. It is on like all of these platforms. The sequel a little less so. Although I think it's on all the virtual consoles. Like it's definitely on the Wii and Wii U virtual consoles. I'm not sure about 3DS.
Yeah, and my experience with StarTropics is really limited. I have attempted to play it a number of times, and it is Zelda-like. It is kind of like the original Legend of Zelda, but not exactly. And I guess the thing that like always intrigues me about it is I feel like Americans export entertainment all the time.
Yeah.
And so, but it is rare. So we have like Hollywood's version of certain cultures.
Yes.
But it is very rare, I think, for us to get for Americans to get an import that is reflecting on our own our culture. So seeing like America through the lens of a different country.
Right, and not like because you do see like American cinema reflected back in the form of other cultures, right? In like anime and stuff, and especially in video games of the era, you're seeing like a ton of like the number of games that are basically just like Rambo or
bad dudes
or aliens, right? Like there's all of that sort of like DNA of the 80s of 80s film culture is sort of still coming out in video game form. Which is wild to me. And part of that is just like the cyclical, like nostalgia nature. And some of it is just like, that's what video games are, right? Like that's when they came of age. That's what Japanese developers thought was cool at the time. I think all the time of Hideo Kojima. And that like, he's making this game with the protagonist whose name is Solid Snake, who is clearly Snake Plissken from Escape from New York, right? Like that's just who the character is, and he goes by the name Plissken in Metal Gear Solid 2. And so like all of these things, like even the most like visionary video game directors are just ripping off 1980s American schlock blockbuster film. So yeah, like that exists, but then there's StarTropics, which is in some ways Indiana Jonesy, and it is in other ways like I don't know, the setting of being like islands in the South Pacific, where an American teenage baseball player is looking for his uncle, who's like an archaeologist or whatever, and has made friends with the natives, which is like the entire premise of the start of the game, is so, for being such a pastiche, it still feels like unique to me.
Yeah, I agree. And what's interesting is that they dropped most of this for Zoda's Revenge.
Mm-hmm.
Like Zoda's Revenge is a very different game.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there is, check me on this if you don't think this is right. But I feel like there's a little bit of the like Amblin, like E.T. Spielberg, sort of like feel to the characters, the relationships, and maybe that's because we're talking about like aliens and like going on an adventure. There's a Dr. Jones.
No, I completely agree. It very much has that kind of like Goonies, like kid going on an adventure vibe. Totally. And I think that is because this game came out in 1990, so I think it is totally a reflection of that like era of those like kid movies or family film.
I wonder if this is really just, and this is only like coming to me now, that this is Nintendo like making the concerted effort to not be ripping off like R-rated movies of the 80s and really be going for more child-friendly movie fare, right?
Oh,
so
interesting.
Instead of making an Alien ripoff with Metroid, they're like, no, we're going to make a Goonies / Gremlins / Indiana Jones ripoff with StarTropics.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, whether it was conscious or not, I do think if like Nintendo in that era was like the primary audience, I won't say primary audience because there were a lot of adults who played like the Nintendo Entertainment System. Like that's probably the game system my mom played the most, But I do wonder if they went in explicitly being like, oh, we are making this game for like for kids in America. Well, what do kids in America like?
Right.
And it's like, because, like there had already been, was it Konami that made like the Goonies 2?
Yeah.
Like video game, like that kind of stuff. So I do think it was permeating the culture.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, at 1990, we're still basically in the 80s, right?
Right.
Yeah. Mark, I'm already excited about where this conversation has started.
But before we get too deep into it, like I said, like I have not played this game really, and so we're gonna do these rankings. But Patrick is going to be my Sherpa through this, and I'm guessing that we have a lot of listeners who are not familiar with StarTropics. So I think it'll just be a cool opportunity to preach the gospel of StarTropics.
I mean, absolutely. StarTropics is a game that for me was like a formative, like I loved the original StarTropics, owned an NES cart, had my, letter that I dipped in water to reveal the secret code halfway through this game, which is something the game makes you do. A well-known piece of video game lore is there in the box, there's like a map and some other things. And one of them is a letter from Mike's uncle, like the main character's uncle, inviting you out on this, week or month or however long you're going to spend with him on an island. And there's a secret code on the letter that only appears when you get it wet. So you had to take this physical object in the real world and actually get it wet to reveal information to like progress in the game.
And is it true that it was kind of like an anti like game rental measure?
Or an anti-piracy measure? Like I think some of that is true, but it's also just a cool like
it's cool. It's totally cool on its own, and it's one of those things that, like, again, growing up in the early days of YouTube, like video game YouTube, and all that kind of stuff. Like when you learn it was just a really cool like thing that made StarTropics kind of stand apart and be this mystical thing that you couldn't really play before Virtual Console, but it like existed.
Right. Well, and not to bring up Hideo Kojima again, but the first Metal Gear Solid also includes a moment where you have to dial in a specific codex frequency, and it is on the back of the CD case. And the characters say, "Oh, you mean the frequency listed on the back of the CD case?" And you have to, in the real world, look at the back of the CD case and get the right frequency. So, like, again, if Hideo Kojima is ripping it off, like, it's good. But yeah, so this StarTropics for me was a game that I had pretty close to release. I had the Nintendo Power with it on the cover. I can still like close my eyes and picture this like parrot sitting on like a branch in front of a beach, and it's like almost Lisa Frankie kind of like colors behind it. Lisa Frank-esque. I understand that her name is Lisa Frank, not Lisa Frankie. um, and it's such a challenging game, so difficult. But I beat it as a kid, and I've probably played StarTropics through to completion a dozen times in my life. Like, it is a game that I genuinely love. Fully embracing all of its flaws. Mike moves very stiffly. There's way too much platforming in a game that like is wholly unforgiving. Like, you're either making a right or a wrong choice when you start a jump, and there's no adjusting it once you've started. He takes too much damage too fast. He has almost no frames of invincibility when he gets hit. So like, if one regular enemy just kind of like gets close to you and sits on you, you die almost immediately. The save system is not very forgiving. When you come back from dying, you don't come back with full hearts. You come back with like 3 or 4 or something really pathetic. And if you drop below certain thresholds, you can't use your weapon upgrades. There are a lot of reasons to not like the game, but I refuse to engage with those because I love it with all my heart.
Well, and probably now like is the best time to play it because you can save state and you can rewind and like all that kind of stuff. So when I said that it plays a little bit like The Legend of Zelda, the structure, and Patrick, correct me where I'm wrong, is similar in that there's like overworld sections, and then there's dungeons that are very similar to like the overhead view that you in the original Legend of Zelda, with the addition of a jump button. So Mike can like jump in a way that Link never could.
And the overworld map feels like an original Dragon Quest game or like Final Fantasy or something, where you are also going into caves, and caves can either be a dungeon like Mark was describing, where it's like more action focused, or it can just be like a path that you're taking. And then there are like villages too. And all of this is broken up into individual chapters. And a chapter takes place either on like an island or the area around an island. And once you finish with a chapter, you just move on. There's no like revisiting. It's not an open world necessarily, as much as it is like 8 small open-ish worlds.
Do you think that Lisa Frankie is Frankenstein's great aunt?
Lisa Frankie. Okay, so they like at Ellis Island they had to drop the Stein, the Stein. From
I'm sorry,
name.
I thought of it too late, and then just had to share it. For some reason, I felt compelled, so I just sat on it.
Right.
Until there was a lull. Let's move on.
Okay. So the first game has a very like tropical theme, which slowly morphs into an alien invasion theme. And sort of like hints of like what's really going on is they're sort of scattered throughout. And I started replaying the game this week just for funsies, and they drop alien hints, and not even hints so much as you read a note from your uncle that says, "I've been abducted by aliens." Like pretty early in the game, as early as chapter 2 of 8. But like it's not really until late in the game that you have to like start battling aliens. Like other than that, it's all just sort of like random sort of episodic adventures of you sailing on this like high-tech submarine that he built for you in the South Pacific.
And the big bad of this game, which I'm assuming we'll get to, is Zoda.
Yes.
And so should we just speak briefly on Zoda's Revenge, StarTropics 2?
Yeah. So StarTropics 2, Zoda's Revenge is either the last or it's either the ultimate or penultimate NES game. I can never remember if it's that or Wario's Woods. It's one or the other. And that game is a time travel game, and it retains the same sort of comedy from the original StarTropics, maybe even leans on it harder, where like everything is a joke. You travel back to ancient Egypt and you're delivering a pizza for Cleopatra. Like that's the kind of stuff that this game has you get it up to. The original StarTropics at least like takes its mission parameters seriously, and then there are jokes kind of scattered throughout. But yeah, I don't like Zoda's Revenge as much as I like the original. I will never think it's not weird that the game is called Zoda's Revenge StarTropics 2. They wanted to bury that StarTropics like as deep as they could, and insanely did so by leading off with the name of the villain that you don't meet the villain until chapter 8. of the original StarTropics.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Now that we're talking about it, is the premise of Zoda's Revenge kind of similar to the premise of Secret of Evermore?
No, because Secret of Evermore, you're going to a land that is made up by the imaginations of the 4 people who participated in the program.
Oh, got it.
In Zoda's Revenge, you are actually traveling through
Traveling.
time. Right.
Okay.
/ you're also visiting Sherlock Holmes, who's not a real historical figure. So I don't know. Okay. StarTropics, let's start doing some rankings here. We've got 3 lists, and we're going to rank them. First is we are going to rank the weapons from StarTropics. I'm just going to go through and say what all of the lists are. So weapons is first, and then we're going to rank the bosses from StarTropics, and then we will be ranking the 8 individual chapters from the game. Mark, let's start just by talking through the weapons. We are using tartarus.rpgclassics.com as a sort of shorthand here. Thank you to tartarus.rpgclassics.com.
I love this site.
An invaluable resource.
Yeah. This is it's awesome. Like, I've never seen it like before today. I had not been here. But in a world
I've
where
been
like
here many times.
in a world where like the fandom wikis have taken over this sort of thing, it is fun to find a site like this that looks like it was created at the end of the 90s or early 2000s.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of the fan sites that I grew up with.
Yeah, it's truly beautiful. So there are 3 main weapons, which we may want to consider all one weapon. Mark, I'm going to leave that up to you. There is the Island Yo-Yo, there is the Shooting Star, and the Supernova. Now, the Island Yo-Yo, not called a yo-yo anymore, because it turns out yo-yo's a trademarked toy that you have to license to use in a video game. So I believe they just call it the Island Star in modern releases of the game. But so this is your base weapon that you get before you start doing battle at all. It gets upgraded to what they call a Shooting Star, which is like a mace, just like a spiky ball on a chain. And then the Supernova, which is sort of like the sci-fi version of that. And they all have like a short range attack, and then depending on how powerful it is, has like a little bit longer like tail that shoots off of it. So they're effectively the same weapon, but Mark, do you want to count them as the same or separate weapons for the purposes of this conversation?
Yeah, so I think they're separate because the Island Yo-Yo, they're each like given to you. They are different things, not like the yo-yo continues to be upgraded.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think it makes sense to count them separately.
Okay. All right. So those are all separate. All 3 are separate items. Then we've got a series of sub-items, starting with the fire, which is a flaming torch that you throw. A baseball bat, which Mike swings, and it's all around him. There's the bola twister, which is like the 2 balls on a string that you throw to tangle up your prey's legs or whatever. In the game, it's just something that he throws. A slingshot, a miracle mirror, which reflects projectiles fired at Mike. A wonder horsehide, which is a baseball that Mike can throw really far across the room. Spikes, which are cleats for Mike's shoes, and when he attacks with these things, everything on the screen freezes, and he jumps in the air and just like teleports to all the enemies on the screen and kicks them all once. It's incredible. There's the asterisk, which is like a throwing star that you push the button to attack, and he throws it, and then you push it again, and it splits into 2 different projectiles. And then there's a laser gun and a super laser. The super laser just being a more powerful version of the laser gun. Mark, do you have any early picks here for very good or very bad weapons?
So for very good, I'm kind of taken with the anything related to the baseball.
Yeah, me too.
Just because like Mike Jones being a left-handed pitcher, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Is like a big part of Mike Jones as a character. He loves baseball.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I would also say that the yo-yo belongs in that same category.
100%.
And the It is because it is so classically like American garbage.
Same with like the slingshot, where
Yeah.
it has a very
He's
like
Dennis
Dennis,
the
the
Menace.
Menace vibe to me.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So like the ones that lean on that kind of like Americana, I think are the most fun. Like the Asterix and the Fire are ones that I would say like I'm not as taken with.
Yeah, I mean it's okay. It's neat because like right now at the top of the list I've got the Island Yo-Yo, the baseball bat, the Wonder Horsehide, and the Slingshot sort of being like the top. Let's also put the spikes in there because they're like
It is unique. And are we thinking like baseball cleats? Like
yeah, I think so,
Okay.
or even like soccer cleats or
Mhm.
whatever an American kid is playing. Because the rest of them I think you can put under like a couple different categories, right? The fire and the bola are all very like those are like island weapons, right?
Mhm.
Those make sense for you to encounter in like an Indiana Jones adventure. And then there's the things that like skew just a little bit more. I guess there's really just the one that I was gonna say skews a little bit more Japanese, which is the asterisk, which is like a throwing star.
Mhm.
And then like the sci-fi stuff, and the sci-fi stuff is the supernova, which I mean it's hard to even say what this thing is. It's an alien yo-yo basically, and then two laser guns. And I like the turn in this game when it goes from being you're on primitive unexplored islands to psych, there are aliens.
Yeah, very Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Crystal Skulls.
That can't be right.
Kingdom of the Crystal
Kingdom of the
Skulls.
Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Yeah. There can't be two movies with temple in the title. Then they become the Temple series. Does it ever bum you out that there are going to be more Jurassic Park movies with the word world in the title than park?
Will there? Wouldn't it just be 3 and 3?
No, because a Lost World.
Oh, right. Well, Lost World like splits the difference because it is both a
It is
Jurassic
Lost
Park film
World,
and
Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, but then it's what?
You're right.
Two
You're
and a
right.
half
It
to
is
three and a
still,
half?
yeah, it is still lopsided.
I'm sorry to bring us down. So I agree that Island Yo-Yo, baseball bat, Wonder, Horsehide, and Slingshot, and the spikes are just absolutely clutch. They're like Americana personified. And so how do you feel about the sci-fi turn in the game? Do you like that it stops being about like being on the islands?
I think it's fun, in theory,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that is a fun like escalation. It feels very Goonies, very like Amblin Entertainment to
Yeah.
have that kind of like turn in it, to have it be like a little bit more. Um, the ones that like, on the one hand, it makes sense to me that the weapons that you would get would be like a laser gun and a super laser, but it just feels kind of boring. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't excite me that much because I feel like I play with laser games in tons of games.
Right.
Oh,
Well,
laser weapon.
and the game does such a great job of including no guns of any kind for most of its run, and then you get to the spaceship and it's like, well, they're laser guns, but like they got triggers and they're guns.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I hear that. I almost wonder if we should just be talking about like the categories of weapons here and just ranking those categories.
Okay.
Because individual, and maybe we can rank just the Americana weapons. Because I think the rest of them are like, I don't think we really care about what order they appear in, right?
Yeah, but is that shirking our duties?
Yes.
Okay, I feel like sidebar.
Yes.
Point of order before we get too much further into
Yes.
this. One, is this a definitive ranking
Yes.
of StarTropics things? Okay, in which case I think we
have
do
to
in
rank them all.
fact
Okay.
have to rank all of them. But I think you and I, there doesn't. I think we will be able to do it fairly easily.
Right.
I don't know if there's going to be a lot of strong feelings about like fire versus Bola, but regardless,
who
since
knows?
it is a
Who
definitive
knows?
ranking,
Right.
we have to promise that we will remain friends.
Absolutely.
After this. Okay.
Absolutely. And after each one of these individual lists, we will remain friends. And after
We'll just check
all
in.
three lists,
Well,
right.
we should check in after
Yeah,
every list.
that's
Make
right.
sure.
Okay. So I have shuffled these things around a little bit just to sort of like lump them all together in their like thematic groups. I've put the Miracle Mirror, the Shooting Star, and the Asterisk all in one. Just because they are all the sort of like fantasy weapons, right? The Shooting Star being more like a ball and chain kind of thing, and the Asterisk being like a throwing star. So I think that's all okay. We like the Americana weapons the most. So let's just rank them, and then we'll sort of run each of the other weapons up against what we have there. So the Americana weapons, just to review, are the yo-yo, the baseball bat, the Wonder Horsehide, which is a baseball, a slingshot, and the spikes.
So I like the Wonder Horsehide. I like that it is called the Wonder Horsehide. It makes me
very
think
funny.
of like the Wonder Bat
Yes.
from The Simpsons. But I think it's only used in a boss battle.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it is only used in a boss battle, and it's just a incredibly long projectile for Mike to use. So that doesn't make it less fun for me, though.
Okay.
Because I think my favorite weapon on this list is the baseball bat. It's an intimidating way. It deals a lot of damage. It hits all around Mike, and also it's a baseball bat. Like, it is the character using the tool he was designed to use. It's like, what's Link's best weapon? It's the sword.
Right. Yeah, that's true. He's not like a yo-yo champion. Mike Jones is a kid that loves baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, it is hard to argue with that. I feel like the slingshot, I am not so crazy about. I love the like Dennis the Menace and Bart Simpson sort of, like have a slingshot type thing. But
man, if the game came out in 1990, they're probably not even being influenced by The Simpsons yet.
Oh, you're right.
That's
yeah, probably
wild.
not. Yeah, that
but
is
the
crazy.
Dennis the Menace point totally stands.
Yeah, but no. So I guess where I go back and forth is like maybe I like the slingshot as far as Americana goes. I think I like the slingshot more than I like the spikes. But as far as like utility in the game, I think the spikes are more fun than the slingshot, which does basically exactly what you would expect it to do.
Right, just fires a projectile. Yeah, I mean I do think in the utility here that the slingshot is the most boring of them, except in also the yo-yo, which is just like your basic attack. But it's so familiar that I can't really rank it too low.
And there's something, for whatever reason, novel
about
the yo-yo at this point. Although I guess,
and the implied controversy about it too, right? That like they can't call it that. In
no,
the game
now
anymore.
It's the Island Star.
Yeah.
Of course, we refuse to be held to that. But don't sue us. Nobody sue us.
Please, no one tell Mattel who owns the right to yo-yo.
Yeah, Yo-Yo Incorporated. It's probably like Kraft or something like that.
Yeah, it probably is. It's probably PepsiCo or Nestle. Nestle probably owns the yo-yo. Okay, so what are you thinking? Which of these is the best weapon?
Okay, so this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Baseball bat,
Mm-hmm.
Wonder Horsehide,
Yes.
yo-yo,
I agree.
slingshot, and then spikes, but I could be talked either way.
I think spikes and then slingshot.
Okay.
I agree with your call on the Dennis the Menace-ness. But the spikes it's a spectacle when you use them. Everything freezes, and Mike just murders everyone with his feet.
That's novel.
Yeah, it's novel.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that a lot. So let's move the yo-yo below the Wonder Horsehide.
So looking at the next items in our list, going to the fire and the bola.
I think that's the order I like them in. I think they're both worse than the Americana weapons in total, and the fire is better than the bola.
I do personally want to put the Miracle Mirror above the fire or the bola.
Yeah.
I think probably not as useful as the other ones, but I love the idea of this like mirror that can reflect fireballs.
Yeah, I mean and also that's just a fun game mechanic, right? Like I know we're mostly talking about these things in terms of like their aesthetics or like the way that they contribute to the overall theme of the game, but the Miracle Mirror is just it's a fun. I love in a game when you have to deflect the bad guy's attacks. Like that's the best. I may even put the Miracle Mirror above the slingshot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually I feel good about that because I feel like the slingshot is kind of just I don't know. It is one of a number of similar weapons like the bola and like all that kind of stuff. where you have like these projectiles
Yeah.
that just kind of get like a little more powerful, whereas like the Miracle Mirror, it's its own thing.
Okay, let's talk about the shooting star, which again is the one that's like a ball and chain, the spiky ball and chain. It is the first upgrade that you get to your basic attack, the yo-yo. You get this item in one of the coolest turns in the entire game, where you are visiting a town that's full of female like Amazon warriors, and you have to dress in drag so that they let you in because there are no men allowed. And yeah, it's a ball and chain used by Amazon warrior women. Like, how do you get cooler than that?
Man, Breath of the Wild just ripping off StarTropics left and right.
I'm tempted to put this one right below the yo-yo. Above the spikes. Honestly, maybe I like it more than the yo-yo.
I think the backstory is more fun.
Yeah. Where do you think?
Like, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Above the yo-yo?
Yeah.
Okay, but below the Wonder Horsehide.
I think so.
Okay. Next is the asterisk, the shooting stars that's split in two.
I don't know. I feel the way about the asterisk as I do the laser gun and the super laser, where I just kind of think it's a little bit lame. Like, like the bola, that's cool, right? Like, how many video games have bolas as weapons?
I think only this and Turok Dinosaur Hunter.
But whereas like throwing stars, seen it, laser guns, seen it.
The throwing stars is almost where it's like, oh, I'm sorry, did you forget that you were making a game obsessively designed for American kids?
Well, I will say that in this era, and
that's true, we were nuts about throwing stars.
We were nuts about like karate and martial arts.
That is true.
So I do think that they can have their cake and eat it too.
All right.
Yeah.
So where do you think this one goes then? Maybe below the Miracle Mirror and above the Slingshot? Slingshot might be better.
Yeah, I think Slingshot might be better. I mean, it is cool that when the throwing star is like split in two.
It is useful.
That's
in
pretty
the
neat.
game. Like you're throwing it and it's traveling like on one plane, and then you hit the button and the two stars that it splits into turn 90 degrees.
Like, that's pretty cool.
It's pretty useful.
So I don't feel super strongly about it, but I'm gonna say above the Slingshot.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, and below the Miracle Mirror. Okay, now we've got the Supernova, the laser gun, and the super laser gun. The Supernova, of course, being the like ultimate upgrade to your yo-yo. Again, it's not really an upgrade, but whatever. So it's unclear what is happening with this thing. It's like a glowing ball that Mike throws from his fist, and like comes back to him. It's a sci-fi weapon.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I like it more than the laser gun or the super laser.
Yeah.
Just because it has some amount of novelty to it.
There's some mystery to it where it's like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
I think again this one goes under the Miracle Mirror and above the asterisk.
The Supernova?
Yeah. You think lower?
I feel like, well, no, I mean there is something kind of cool that like it comes back to like a boomerang, right?
The Supernova?
Uh-huh.
I mean it's like the yo-yo in that it comes back to you.
I see. Yes. Yeah, in which case I may be okay with it where it is.
Below the bola.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just like the fact that there's a bola in this video game.
No,
I think that's cool.
Do we need to revise where the bola is? Does it now go above throwing torches at bad guys?
Yes, that's a good point. I actually think I like it more than the Slingshot.
Okay, so is it, how about the throwing stars? Is it better than the throwing stars?
Yes.
So is it better than the Miracle Mirror?
No.
Okay. Okay, the bola has now graduated to just above the throwing stars and below the Miracle Mirror.
I just think it's neat.
Yeah, I mean I can't argue with that. But now I think this gives the Supernova some room to climb up this list.
I think that's probably right.
It's better than the torch.
Uh-huh.
I think I like it better than the Slingshot.
Yeah.
Yeah, better than the Slingshot, worse than the throwing stars.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then for the last two, for the laser gun and for the super laser, I am fine with it in this order. The only thing I would say is like a laser gun that can shoot 3 lasers at a time is probably cooler than a laser gun that can only shoot 1.
Yeah, I mean, 3 lasers is better than 1 laser.
I feel like that. I learned that in
That's
science.
like a self-evident thing. Yeah. Okay, so Mark, we have come up with the how many weapons are there here? There are 12. And so from the bottom up, coming in at number 12, there are 13 of them. So coming in at number 13 is the laser gun. Number 12, the super laser. And number 11 is the fire. Number 10 is the supernova. Number 9 is the slingshot. Number 8 is the asterisk. Number 7 is the bola. Number 6 is the miracle mirror. Number 5 is the spikes. Number 4 is the island yo-yo. Number 3 is the shooting star. Number 2 is the wonder horsehide. And coming in at number 1, the best weapon in all of StarTropics, the baseball bat.
I feel good about this.
Yeah, it's kind of quick and dirty for a definitive ranking, but I think it's right.
I think so too.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't think it's okay that we haven't like belabored it. Also, I just want to point out that I learned in science class that 3 lasers are better than 1. Not I learned it in science.
Well, wait, tell me what the difference is.
Just clarifying.
Oh, okay.
That it was in like science class that I learned this,
and not through the course of like conducting a scientific experiment.
That's right.
Okay, I guess it's an important distinction.
I don't want to be a braggadocio about something that I didn't do.
Right.
I didn't run a controlled experiment where I
a double
definitively
blind where,
determined
that
sure. 3, are better than. I mean, I guess I did just determine definitively that 3 is better than 1, but
or we discovered it. Like it's hard to say what happened, right? But it was definitive,
and we're still friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, we are going to move on to ranking the bosses. Now, again, we are pulling from Tartarus.rpgclassics.com. And I feel like they are a little bit generous with what they are and are not considering bosses. They sort of take any fight in the game that is like sort of eventized. So sometimes those happen in the middle of dungeons. And then there's like a real boss at the end. So Mark, I think up to you. Do you want to count the mini bosses also as bosses, or should we do just the bosses?
I think mini boss is its own thing, so I think just the bosses.
Okay. Do we take the mini bosses into account when considering the bosses? And I think that maybe really only applies to the final boss.
I'll lean on you for that.
Okay.
Because I have never seen the final boss.
Sure.
So is like the mini boss like a different form of the, how like sometimes,
yes. And that is the case for Zoda in your final confrontations.
Then yeah, we should probably at least take that into account.
Okay, so I'll maybe shout out the mini bosses as we go down the list here, but they will not be part of the ranking with the sole exception of Zoda because it is Zoda multiple forms. Okay. So the first boss is the sea serpent that you encounter in chapter 1. It's just a big snake. The next boss is Octo the Huge. Well named, I think it's a giant octopus. Next is Magma the Fierce, which is some sort of man made out of fire.
Kind of looks like a fiery Dr. Manhattan a little bit.
It does kind of look like a fiery Dr. Manhattan. Maxi, who is a giant ghost, which is really just like a blown up sprite of like the smaller ghosts you encounter through the rest of the graveyard. Next is Broken Joe, who's sort of like an Easter Island like stone head. His mini boss is the giant Turboss, which is a like fossil looking thing. But the Broken Joe is the boss fight that Mark was referring to earlier, where you have to use the horsehide. We just talked about it, just ranked it.
Wonder
Horsehide is correct. Then next boss is the statues of Twin Sumocho, who are like 2 creepy looking statues that like attack you together. Their mini boss is a hoodoo doll, which is too close to being a voodoo doll, and I don't think we should mess around with that. So the less we talk about it, the better. Next is the Ostroid, which is the first boss that you fight on the spaceship. It's like a robot ostrich. Its mini bosses are silver and gold jetpack jumpers. And then the final boss that we'll talk about here is Zoda, who you fight in 2 different forms, and you also fight like the engine on his ship in between them. So the first version is kind of like a Wizard of Oz-esque. Like you see his face and you see like disembodied like hands and stuff. And you defeat that. And this is the sort of like when you see pictures of Zoda now, that's what you're seeing. The sort of like regal. He's got a helmet with horns and like a cape. But the true form of Zoda is a monster. He looks like an alien from Aliens, but like fatter and with uglier teeth. So like it's neat that they make you fight like sort of a cool suave version of him and then reveal that like no, he's just like a creepy monster guy.
Yeah, he does look like a little like chunky
Yeah,
xenomorph.
he's a chunky xenomorph. But I think it's important to remember that the first time you encounter him, he's putting up this facade somehow, be it by magic or technology, that makes him look like a disembodied face and hands and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like to imagine it's this little like his true form, his little like fat xenomorph guy is like manipulating rods and pulleys
Yeah,
to make the big like Wizard of Oz-esque Zoda go.
I like that too. It could also be like in Men in Black, where like there's a little
oh yeah
piloting the a Zoda suit. I would like that as well. Mark, early picks here for bosses you like, bosses you don't like.
For whatever reason, I'm really drawn to the Ostroid.
The Ostroid has got a cool looking design. Again, I will refer people back to the best source of StarTropics stuff on the internet, tartarus.rpgclassics.com, and check out the design of the Ostroid. There's some like impressive 8-bit shading on this sprite.
Do you know what I think? The Ostroid kind of reminds me of L337. Is that the droid from Solo?
Yeah.
And how
hippie?
Yes, for whatever reason. And I could not it just made me laugh really hard in Solo when it was like, "Oh, this is a lady droid, so let's give her like big ol' birthin' hips."
That's right.
And that's what this Ostroid reminds me of a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely got a little bit of that like just some wide hips. So I like the Ostroid too. I'm hard pressed to. I think Zoda for me is like a runaway.
I love this true form Zoda. I wish there was an amiibo of it.
Oh my god!
I wish there was plush. It's like
Zoda for Smash.
It's so funny looking. Like it's a little bit like dinosaur-y, a little bit dragony, a little bit of a xenomorph, but just like fat, like squat and fat.
Yeah, and like maybe he's got like weird little phalanges on his belly or something. Like there's some weird stuff happening to this character.
He almost looks like a puppy a little bit. You know, it has that same sort of like
yes, like his feet are too big.
Yeah. It's like, oh, one day Zoda will grow into himself. Right now he's just flopping around in a spaceship.
I gotta say, I am also a sucker for the Sea Serpent. That's the letter C Serpent, who is the boss of
because the whole
sea
island, okay,
is shaped like the letter C. And it's actually like an impressive sprite model for this character. You know, it is several sprites put together, including like a mouth that's pretty well articulated, that like bears its fangs and shoots fireballs at you. And also, you know, there's just a little bit of that like first boss nostalgia where it's like everyone who plays the game will at least get to this boss. So I like the Sea Serpent too, but for me, I think Zoda number 1, maybe Sea Serpent number 2, and I can go Ostroid number 3, and then I don't know, it becomes kind of a jumble after that.
So Magma the Fierce.
Yeah.
I'm reading the description of like the strategy for how to defeat him.
Yeah.
And it says like that Magma can't die. The only way to defeat him is to drop him into the water. And so I'm curious, I kind of like the design of Magma the Fierce. Again, reminds me of like a red Dr. Manhattan with like flames all around him.
Yeah.
And so I think the design is kind of cool, but I'm wondering, to judge it more than just on like the aesthetics,
the fight is fun.
The boss, oh, it's fun.
Yeah.
Okay, because I feel like it could tip into annoying.
I mean, it's one of the few bosses in the game where it makes you engage with the game in the same way that you have been playing it the whole time, right? Where you're doing this sort of obnoxious platforming while trying to stay alive in a bullet hell scenario, and just like navigate around till you find the switches that drop him into the water. So like in that way, it is maybe one of the best boss fights.
Okay.
So I think that makes it worthy of him being high up on the list, possibly even above the Ostroid. How do you feel about that?
Let me quickly look at what the Ostroid fight is.
The asteroid fight is it's very like linear. It's one of the few fights where like you have no other place to really go other than just like left and right, and so you're just
Oh, you just have to knock him back.
you just have to knock him back.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, not as cool. It would be cool if like Ostroid was giving birth to like, or was basically like was
You
giving
just
birth.
can't get off these hips.
If Ostroid was like Birdo
Yes.
and was like shooting these like mechanical eggs out of its like mouth
Yes.
that it was like birthing.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be cool. Just have it kind of be like stomping towards you and you have to like knock it off the ledge. Not as fun.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think maybe next statues of Twin Samocho.
Yeah, them and the Broken Joe. I like the name Broken Joe.
Yeah,
I
me
like
too.
the fact that you use the baseball. So maybe that's enough to keep him above. Keep him above the statues of Twin Sumocho.
I mean, there's also just like the simplicity and sort of like iconicness of him being just an Easter Island head.
Yeah.
Although the statues of Twin Samocho are, the design of them is very like cool and evocative. It is again maybe an example of them leaning into the more like Japanese like design elements. Like they almost feel like they're like Oni or something.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting that they are Cyclops.
Yes, I will agree with that.
But no, I still think Broken Joe
is better.
Yeah. Better name.
Yeah, I mean Broken Joe, a plus name.
It paints a story.
It does. Is it better than the Ostroid?
I am just really taken with the Ostroid
All right,
for whatever reason.
So then towards the bottom of the list here, they may not remain there. Octo the Huge, which is a giant octopus, who, by the way, has kidnapped a dolphin. And Maxie, who is a giant ghost. I mean, I think Maxie the giant ghost belongs at the very bottom of this list.
Yeah, I don't mind the ghost sprite.
I don't mind the ghost sprite either, and I like it. I like the way they like kind of church it up when they blow it up. Like the shading on it is good. But it's also, why would a ghost be big?
Yeah, I mean, I guess possibly Maxie was a big thing that died.
Sure.
Because we don't really know what Maxie was in its previous life.
But like you're walking around a graveyard, right? This is and then you fight like regular ghosts in the graveyard. You're like, oh, okay.
But couldn't like a fossil of something huge be like buried under the graveyard?
I mean, I suppose there could be, but you never encounter anyone huge.
No, but I'm saying like the fossil of some long forgotten creature, right? When the entire world was covered in water.
Yeah, sure.
Just happens to be underneath this cemetery. So you're in the cemetery where there are other ghosts, normal-sized people ghosts, floating around. But then also the cemetery is haunted by like an enormous early life form on this planet from like hundreds of millions of years
life,
ago.
Right?
Well, I mean,
do non-humans have ghosts? I guess there are skeleton dogs that you fight in the graveyard. It's okay. I withdraw my complaint. It could be a whale ghost.
It could be a whale ghost. Maybe like
we'll talk more about whales later.
When it was a land whale.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, okay.
We're talking land whales here, and of course those were all drowned in the flood, right? Noah, read your Bible. Mark, is this our list then?
I like it. Okay, I will let you check me here. Is Ostroid too high on this list? Do I have Ostroid fever?
I think
you
got Ostroid fever. I think you do.
Inexplicable.
Here's the thing. I agree that the design of the Ostroid is charming. I don't think it's as good as Broken Joe.
Okay.
But I don't...
Here's... In response, I will say, Broken Joe is just an Easter Island statue. So is the design all that great?
I mean... Yeah, it's so evocative. Like
it does fit the setting very well.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I have baby fever or something, and so I saw that Ostroid and was like, perfect.
Like, that Ostroid can birth me an heir. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bosses here. Coming in at number 8 is Maxi, the giant ghost. Number 7 is Octo, the huge. Number 6 is the statues of Twin Samocho. Number 5 is the Ostroid. Number 4 is Broken Joe. Number 3 is Magma the Fierce. Number 2 is the Sea Serpent. And coming in at number 1 is Zoda, both in his true form and his Wizard of Ozzy form.
I think I really like
That's
this
a great list.
Yeah.
I have no notes on that. It's definitive. Mark, we are moving on now to the.
Oh, friends?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Friends,
great.
Shaking hands.
All right.
Okay, good. Now we will rank the chapters of StarTropics. I will say that there is a bigger range of what you do in a given chapter of this game than there are in most games of the era, and even really. Like there is one of these chapters where there is no combat. There's no dungeon in chapter 4.
Oh, that's cool.
And so like the game has very different priorities depending on what chapter you're in. And so I think it's worth exploring what each of these chapters is, what it has to offer, and determining which one of them is the best.
Yeah, so what, not to put you on the spot, but do you want to kind of like walk us through each chapter a little bit?
Yeah, I'm going to tell us the whole story.
Okay, great. I'm excited for this.
Of StarTropics. So chapter 1 is titled Prelude. It is the beginning of the game. As you show up on Sea Island, you are Mike, this baseball player that we have described. You are there to spend a week or a month or whatever with your uncle, who has been studying strange artifacts on this island. He's made best friends with the island chief and the other natives. So in this chapter, you arrive on the island, you visit the village. They say, oh no, your uncle has gone missing. And then there is one dungeon that you fight through. You fight the sea serpent in there, and you do so with the yo-yo that you were gifted by the chief of Coral Cola, which is the name of the village in chapter 1. And when you make it out the other side, you meet Babu, who is your uncle's like assistant, who's like working with him on his science experiments. And he gives you access to the Sub-C, which is the submarine that you pilot through the rest of the game. And you meet Navcom, which is an obvious Rob the Robot, who is your like navigational equipment in the submarine.
Love it.
And again, it's chapter 1. If you've played the game, you've played through chapter 1. It's not tough. Chapter 2 is called Dolphins, and this is one where this is the first like side quest they throw at you, where a dolphin has been kidnapped by that Octo the Huge that I mentioned earlier. You meet the lighthouse keeper and his wife, who don't live together, and the lighthouse keeper is like, you should stop by my wife's house. She likes the company. It's very strange. I don't know what's implied there. It's the first time that you get the ability to submerge the sub and access other areas on the map. And as I mentioned before, this is where you get a letter in a bottle from your uncle saying, I've been kidnapped by aliens. So I need you to not just find me here in the ocean, but also maybe I'm in space. Who knows? Questions about chapter 2?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Chapter 3 is called Storm and Calm. And this is a huge chapter. I think it has the most separate like parts throughout like the course of this single chapter. You are shipwrecked on a large island. There are multiple towns. There's Miracola, which has a chief and his daughter who is sick. She needs like some medicine. This is the island that has She-Cola on it, which is the village that is all made up of Amazon warrior women. You visit the graveyard here. You fight ghosts. You have to cross-dress to get into the Amazon woman town. You go to a hermit on the mountaintop who gives you the medicine to save the chief's daughter, who then helps you like get your submarine repaired so you can get back on the open ocean.
Man, that chapter sounds really cool. A question about the chapter titles.
Yes.
Do those like show up in the game?
Yes. There's
it
a
says
title
like
card.
chapter 3, Storm and Calm.
Correct.
Because Storm and Calm is a great name.
It's
for
a
chapter
rad name. Yeah. It seems like because that's not like an idiom, Storm and Calm.
No, it sounds like something that would be in like a Robert Louis Stevenson book or something like that.
Absolutely. Chapter 4, as I mentioned, this is the one where there are no dungeons. You land on a very small island with a village called Tuna Cola. and you talk to someone who said they've seen a monster out in the ocean, and that your father's assistant Babu has been swallowed by this monster. You go out looking. You too are swallowed by the whale, and you just have to like navigate around inside this whale, Pinocchio style, until you find Babu and start a fire, make the whale sneeze, and then he sneezes out you and
Oh, really?
Babu.
That's
Yeah.
like that's interesting that it's another kind of like I mean, I guess like Pinocchio isn't specifically and Pinocchio was very like 50 years old at this point
Right.
and not specifically targeted towards Americans, but that's interesting that that's like part of it is that like
Yeah, I mean it's like there's the Pinocchio and there's also the story of like Jonah and the whale.
right.
And it's like you can count there are 3 instances where characters are swallowed by whales in fiction, and they are Jonah, Pinocchio, and StarTropics.
Is the no combat fun? Like is
No, not really.
Oh, okay, yeah, because it seems like that could be cool, but I could also see how it'd be really annoying.
This is also where when you rescue Babu that he says dip your uncle's letter in water.
Okay.
So this is the part of the game where it forces you to play the game outside the game.
The pros and the cons.
Right. Chapter 5 then is Captain Bell, which is you are approaching 2 sets of islands, and there's a strait between them, and the strait is blocked by Captain Bell's pirate ship. Captain Bell is this legendary pirate who is long since dead and gone, but he had such a lasting influence on these islands that the village is called Bell Cola, named for him.
Was he also the captain of that ship that blocked the Suez Canal?
Probably.
Oh! Wait, Patrick, come back.
Oh, what? Oh, I left because I liked that joke too much. You encounter Captain Bell's parrot, who sings a little song at you, which you will later have to play on a giant organ in a abandoned church to like access a passageway.
Ooh, I like this.
It's very cool. And then you go into like it's another kind of like ghosty piratey realm, which is full of booby traps and stuff. This is the dungeon of the area. There's no boss fight here,
Huh.
which is a little strange.
Yeah, it seems like the perfect opportunity for like
Why are
big
you
ol',
not
like,
fighting
Davy
Captain
Jones.
Bell?
Oh yeah, totally.
Or Captain Bell's ghost. I don't know. Anyway, that's chapter 5. Chapter 6 is Reunion. And this is one where you are finally like narrowing in on your uncle. There's a lot of meeting people in various villages, and Navcom updating you about like the coordinates of where your uncle is. You are doing a lot of submerging. You encounter just a lot of like strange things. There's an apple that you can find, like a hidden item that's an apple. It does nothing, but you can collect it. You can also discover a skeleton that is labeled as RC, and then Mike asks himself, Rob Carusa Cola? So it's using it's I think a reference it to Robinson Crusoe, using the like cola pun that's on the end of various words.
Right, so it's like a reference to both Robinson Crusoe and RC Cola.
Absolutely.
Got it. That's so weird that they based all of this around cola.
It doesn't
Like,
make any
that's
sense.
like- yeah.
Two different big boss fights in this one. There's Broken Joe and the statues of twin Sumocho. And then at the end of this chapter, you actually find your uncle. You learn about all these aliens and the existence of the 3 magic cubes that he was studying and trying to find, so we can save some other aliens from the bad aliens. So this is the chapter where you finally get to your uncle, you figure out what's going on, and you learn like the reality about the aliens.
Got it.
Chapter 7, Alien Spaceship. You're on the spaceship. You get the shooting star as a weapon. This is the first one where like you're using the laser guns. You fight the asteroid in here, and the ship takes off. So it's you're storming the castle here in this one, and the ship takes off. It's a scary moment.
Now, some of the island stuff, like the overworlds are simple,
Yeah.
but it has that tropical like islandy feel. What is the spaceship like? Is it like
Kind of drab,
Okay.
honestly. Like it's got a like blue pipe sci-fi aesthetic. So like everything is like pipes and like I sort of lifting a little bit from Alien here with the like sort of like piping.
got it?
But kind of resting in blue. This is also where the game has like a ridiculous difficulty curve, and the individual enemies take way more damage and deal way more damage.
Oh, got it.
So this one's a little bit of a bummer. And then Chapter 8 is really just the final battle with Zoda. You fight his Wizard of Oz style form. Then you stop over at the ship's engine and beat the crap out of it. And then you fight the final version of Zoda. And of course, because you've destroyed the engine, the ship goes crashing down into the earth. You escape in an escape pod. And then you put all three of the they're not cosmic cubes, they're just magic cubes together, and it reveals the children of Argonia, who are the nice aliens that Zoda was trying to murder. And then the game ends with them retiring to the original Sea Island where you started your adventure to live a life in peace and safety away from Zoda.
So, what is the relation? Why is Dr. Jones kidnapped by Zoda?
Because he has discovered that there are these magic cubes, which are, they're what, I guess maybe what has locked the Argonian children away, or something. It's unclear to me.
Yeah.
They were to Dr. Jones, they were just artifacts. And then Zoda figured out that he was like getting too close to the thing that was going to like free his enemies.
Oh, so Dr. Jones is not motivated to free the children of Argonia. Nobody knows that the children of Argonia exist until the very end when it's like, by the way,
it's unclear to me.
Oh, okay.
It's unclear to me how much he knows.
It just feels so random to have it be like, oh, you put the cubes together and this other alien race that you haven't encountered like is free, which isn't bad, but it's like, oh, like Zoda doesn't really present a threat to, Sea Island or
yes.
Mike or really Dr. Jones, other than like Dr. Jones just happened to stumble upon.
If Dr. Jones was like, oh, my bad, these are your cubes, I'll leave you alone. Like everything would go back to normal. I mean, it is. And like I said, I think you don't hear the name Zoda in the game here. It's an 8-bit game. You see the word printed. I think you see it printed at the end of chapter 6. And then you meet the character in chapter 8 when you fight him. So like he is a real like come late in the game, big bad, man behind the curtain sort of character.
That's even weirder that the sequel is like features him prominently, since
and
the vast majority of
Argonians.
people probably didn't even. Oh, really?
Yeah, the you're like given orders by the lead Argonian, whose name I can't remember. She's a princess or something. She's like one of the main side characters in Zoda's Revenge.
That's so funny. It makes me wish that like StarTropics had continued on, because then we would get, like Metroid style, we'd get a lot of backstory for like the history of the Argonians.
Oh my god. Okay, so let's start ranking these things. Early contenders for the top of the list for me are chapters 3 and 5. Chapter 3 is Storm and Calm, the one that shipwrecks you and you have all of these things that you have to do. And chapter 5 with Captain Bell and his awesome ship that's blocking the thing, meeting the parrot, playing music on this organ. God, chapter 5 is the best one.
Yeah, and with like ghost pirate stuff, it just seems like, that seems like a very cool setting. So those are the two that really stand out to me after you walked us through the game. So yeah, I'm totally happy with chapters 5 and chapter 3 being at the beginning. I am curious your thoughts about chapter 1. For me, I like it, but that's partly because it is, the one that I've played the most in my multiple attempts to get into StarTropics.
It's a pretty good one. In replaying the first couple hours of the game earlier this week, I was sort of retaken by how charming that first village is, and that like because everywhere else you go, people are sort of like freaked out about something, and no one knows that Dr. Jones has gone missing except for the chief. So when you're talking to all the characters, you have to talk to everyone before they let you into the dungeon. They're just like, hey, do you want to go fishing? There's a point where there's a pig and you can talk to the pig and it just is like, oink, oink, oink. And then you go into the house and the woman is like, we're going to roast that pig later. So, I mean, there is a lot to like about chapter 1. You meet Babu, you get to meet the Navicomputer. Like, it's a pretty good chapter. I think maybe Dolphins is better.
Oh, okay.
I don't really care for the boss, Octo the Huge. But the first thing that happens in this chapter is you're cruising along, and a mama dolphin swims up to you.
Oh, I was wondering how you find out that the
Yeah.
dolphin was missing.
Because Mama Dolphin goes quack 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 quack, and then Navcom is like, translating, and then like says what she says to you, and then you spend the whole time rescuing a dolphin. And there's the whole thing with the lighthouse keeper and his wife, and why he wants you to go and visit his wife. He won't be there. She just likes the company. I don't know. It's all very good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you've convinced me. So I think chapter 2 makes sense above chapter 1.
Yeah.
So I'm torn a little bit on chapter 4, Confession.
Yeah.
Because this is one where Mike is swallowed by a whale. And so the one with the bottle, right? The message that you have to dunk in water
Right.
to reveal the hidden code. All of that seems very appealing to me. And like, I feel like the hidden code is an iconic part of StarTropics. But you were saying it's kind of a bummer to play.
It's a super bummer to play, and there's no combat. Granted, the combat is sometimes annoying in the game, but like you're spending the whole time just riding the submarine around inside this whale,
Mm-hmm.
and it just shows you like tiny sections of the map to like aid in the sort of disorientation of getting through this maze. It's one that if anyone were playing it now, I would say use a guide, use a map. Like don't even bother getting lost in there. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But you are right that it is conceptually maybe only second to Captain Bell in just like the concepts that the game plays with there. It just in execution isn't as much fun. I don't know. I could be convinced that this one goes at number 3 above Dolphins. I could be convinced that it belongs below Dolphins or even below the first chapter.
So maybe let's just keep it where it is right now, which
Okay.
is below the first chapter. Because I am not really sure how I feel about Reunion or how I feel about Alien Spaceship.
Yeah. So for me, I put Alien Spaceship at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
Because of the difficulty spike, and because it's just like 2 consecutive combat gauntlets, with with Asteroid notwithstanding, not a lot of like interesting enemies to fight.
Yeah.
Like worse than the final battle against Zoda for sure.
And so speaking of which, where do you think the final battle fits? Because we ranked it very highly as a boss battle, but
Right. But it's already sort of appearing lower on this list. I think it's better than Reunion. Reunion has a lot of like difficult combat sections, but also just a lot of piloting the ship around, getting updates on coordinates, and just like dialing in where your uncle is.
And 2 bosses just seems like too many bosses.
That's 2 bosses is too many bosses. So Reunion honestly could go last, could go second to last for me.
Oh, okay. Wow. I do like RC Rob Carusa-Cola.
Sure.
It's a rough pun. Like they're really working for it.
Yeah.
But I like the attempt.
They work hard for it, honey. All right. So we'll put that above Alien Spaceship.
Okay.
But below Final Battle.
Yeah.
Which I think then means that we just need to figure out where Chapter 4 Confession goes.
Well, you tell me, is Final Battle more fun than Confession? Because it feels almost like Confession should go lower.
I mean, you get swallowed by a whale.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So, like, conceptually,
we really
it's
like
so good. Confession.
There's also a tiny detail that I left out of Confession.
Okay.
The character that you meet in the village of Tunacola before you go out and get swallowed by the whale, his name is Bait.
Ooh, you were holding out on me.
I was holding out on you.
Okay. Okay, I like that. That's funny.
It's not. It is. You are correct. It is not as fun as the final battle
To play. But do we honor the attempt?
Also, what's more fun than dipping real paper in water?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, that's a great point. I feel like, despite maybe it not being the most compelling chapter, the fact that it is the chapter that includes like probably the most notorious piece of StarTropics trivia.
Yes.
That if you have never played StarTropics but are like you
If you just know
possibly, you
weird
probably
things
have
about
could.
stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I think I think this placement makes sense to me.
I kind of want to put it above the Prelude.
Oh, okay.
Because because it is so compelling.
Yeah.
But I keeping it below the Dolphins just because.
Okay. I think we should give it that bump because I really do think that like the thing that StarTropics is known for most, if somebody's heard about StarTropics,
Yeah.
is the like anti-cheating or whatever, having to put the letter into the water.
Well, then in that case, do we put it above Dolphins?
I'm gonna have to defer to you because I have not played Dolphins. For whatever reason, I feel real confident. It's talking about the other chapters that I haven't played, but this feels like a big decision. Moving into the top 3.
I mean, what do I like more? Do I like a sort of meta physical game thing, or do I like the implication that you're cucking the lighthouse keeper's wife? Like, which do I like more, Mark? This is tough.
That's a
for
tough
me.
decision.
It's a tough decision.
You love both those things.
I do. I'm gonna put it above Dolphins.
Okay.
I'm putting it above Dolphins, and it is one of those things that like doesn't survive to modern playthroughs of this game, right?
Right.
You have to look up the information online, or
right?
whatever.
And the information is everywhere online. You are lousy with this information.
Right. It's 747, by the way.
Whereas, like in the 90s,
yeah.
How would you get this outside of like Nintendo Power or somebody telling you?
Yeah, that would be it. Or dipping the letter in water.
Right.
Okay, so from the bottom up, the worst chapter in StarTropics, coming in at number 8, is Chapter 7, Alien Spaceship. At number 7 is Chapter 6, Reunion. At number 6 is Chapter 8, Final Battle. At number 5, Chapter 1, Prelude. At number 4, Chapter 2, Dolphins. At number 3, the third best chapter in StarTropics is Chapter 4, Confession. Coming in at number 2 is Chapter 3, Storm and Calm. And the number 1 best chapter in all of StarTropics is Chapter 5, Captain Bell.
This makes me want to play StarTropics. It really does. Make another attempt at it.
I mean, it is. I don't even know if I can recommend it. Like, I love it, obviously. As you have just helped me talk about it for 80 minutes. Mark, how did you let me do this?
And it's not even your birthday.
No. I guess this counts as my birthday present. All right, those are our definitive rankings for the chapters, bosses, and weapons in the original StarTropics. Mark, let's close this out. If you think we messed up any of those rankings, please let us know. Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. These rankings are all definitive, but I guess they are also subject to change, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is a definitive ranking for sure. But
right.
In the future, we might decide to reevaluate this after playing the games again or something, or for the first time.
Or if someone makes a compelling argument about how
I could be swayed.
Is the best chapter in any video game ever, I would hear that argument.
But also, Patrick and I still great friends.
Still the best of friends.
So I feel like mission accomplished.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, please rate, review, and follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the episode, share it on Facebook or Twitter, wherever you share stuff. That would help us out a lot. There's someone in your life who appreciates StarTropics. You may not know it because they've been embarrassed to say it to you, but they're out there. Just ask around. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MK Mitchell, and the show is at NinCart Society. We also have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying, sincerely, thank you for listening to this. Thank you.
My name is Will Hines, and I am a ghostwriter, meaning I write other people's books for them. And I have a podcast called I Will Write Your Book, which are recordings of my meetings with my eccentric clients, such as a woman blocked after one sentence of a children's book about her dogs, a romance novelist who dislikes sex, and a man proud of having sampled everything in his local grocery store. This podcast has been described as fully improvised, played by some of the best comedians on the planet Earth. Hey, that's pretty good. That's I Will Write Your Book on Campfire Media.
Campfire.